Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's deep dive event offered through NOAA Ocean Exploration and the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute and supported by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. For today's program, we have registrants from far and wide, and we'd like to ask that you please say hello in the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from. So during tonight's event, we're going to take a dive into maritime heritage, or more specifically, marine archaeology. The study of maritime heritage opens fascinating windows into the past. It improves our understanding of the history of human interaction with the ocean and reminds us and broadens our understanding of our collective past. Archaeology, whether it's on land or underwater, is simply defined as the science of learning about past human behavior by examining the physical remains left behind by people of the past. And the story of water, people, and the interrelationship between the two is all. Underwater archaeological sites most notably include shipwrecks, like this Japanese World War II cargo ship found in the Pacific, or this 19th century copper-clad cargo vessel that was found in the Gulf of Mexico, or this sunken schooner barge found in the depths of the lake. However, they also include sunken planes and sunken submarines and paleo landscapes, meaning currently submerged regions like those you see here off the coast of California that can provide information on historic human migration and climate fluctuations. These sites and their associated artifacts, like these amphora or this iron stove or this cannon, provide us with tangible links to our collective human history and our glimpses into our social, economic, and cultural evolution. All maritime heritage sites are like time capsules, preserving a single moment or a period of time. And by studying them, we can remember and better understand the past, inform the present, and in some cases, provide healing and restoration. And while archaeological research and exploration is teaching us an awful lot about ships, planes, and submarines, and how they've influenced the course of human history, scientists are also learning how these sunken structures influence the ecology in deep water marine environments, from the transfer of organisms from one body of water to another as a vessel travels from one sea to another, to serving as places where marine life can colonize and thrive. Fully exploring our cultural heritage on land and under the ocean's surface informs our future and impacts smart decision making about these special and sometimes sacred places. And part of our goal today is to help make the connections between the science and the culture. We can't explore these places without the science, but once we see them, oftentimes there are incredible stories behind them. I'm Susan Haynes from NOAA Ocean Exploration, and I'm really thrilled to have you all here with us tonight. And to start our deep dive with our visiting experts and give them a sense of your interest, we'd like to start by asking you guys a question using a Mentimeter code. So to provide your answer, please go to menti.com and put in the voting code, or you can scan the QR code here on the screen on your phone and you'll be sent directly to the interactive poll. Or you can use the direct link that is posted in the YouTube description on our YouTube channel. So the question tonight is, what topics related to marine archaeology are you most interested in learning about tonight? And you can choose all that apply between A, B, C, D, and E here. So we're going to give you a few moments to answer that question. And while you're answering, our plan for tonight is to spend 50 to 60 minutes directly with our visiting maritime heritage experts and provide you time to dig into the topic of underwater archaeology, no pun intended, to ask your questions. And we'll then briefly share a few of the fantastic education resources that we have available to bring this topic alive into your classroom. So tonight we've welcomed educators and we've also welcomed students and the general public to join us. And for educators, while this learning opportunity is a little bit different from our annual educator professional development opportunities that we offer around the country, we're absolutely sure that you're going to gain some great knowledge tonight and find some great resources that are super helpful for the classroom, whether you're teaching science, history, social studies, or biology. Because as we're going to notice and learn, marine archaeology is truly an interdisciplinary subject. So thank you all for saying hello in the chat. And I'm just going to recognize a few here to give you guys some sense of range. We've got folks joining us from Lake Quinault, Washington. We've got folks from Indiana and New Hampshire and California. So we're so grateful to have everybody here. We've got Tampa, Florida. We have Martina joining us from Italy. We've got folks from Boston and Oregon. So thank you all for jumping in and welcome to this evening's event. And thank you also for letting us know what your interests are this evening. We're going to pull up that Mentimeter and take a look at what your specific interests are. So it looks like everybody's interested in a little bit of everything from innovative tools to our experts' experience and their view of the future of marine archaeology to current explorations in marine archaeology, which got a big hit, resources that are available, and then several of you are also interested in careers that support the field. So our experts and myself will take note of that, and we will try to focus on those areas that you all are most interested in. So thanks for answering that question. And with that, tonight I am so excited to be joined by Dr. Leila Hamdan from the University of Southern Mississippi and Dr. Justin Dunnavant from UCLA, who will not only answer your burning questions, but they're also going to help to highlight some of the most interesting aspects of marine archaeology today. So a little bit about both of our experts. Leila Hamdan is an Associate Vice President of Research and Coastal Operations and a professor in the School of Ocean Science and Engineering at the University of Southern Mississippi. She's a molecular microbial ecologist, and her studies focus on geomicrobiology and the impact of changing environmental conditions on the structure and function of marine estuarine communities. Her current studies center on microbial biogeography on continental margins and the impacts of hydrocarbons and chemical dispersants on communities found on artificial reefs, like shipwrecks, in the depths of the Gulf of Mexico. She's worked as a research microbiologist at the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory and is also a past president of the Coastal and Estuarine Research Foundation. And Dr. Justin Dunnavant is an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at UCLA. His research interests include historical archaeology of Africa and the African diaspora, meaning the dispersal of Africans from their homeland, and the transatlantic slave trade, oral history, community-based archaeology, maritime archaeology, and Black geographies. His current research is in the U.S. Virgin Islands, investigating the relationship between ecology and enslavement in the former Danish West Indies. He is the co-founder of the Society of Black Archaeologists and a scientific scuba diver with the American Academy of Underwater Sciences. And in 2021, Justin was named a National Geographic Emerging Explorer and inducted into the Explorers Club as one of the 50 people changing the world that you need to know about. And by the way, he's also on the board of trustees of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, which helps to support this particular program. So Leila and Justin, come on screen. Having you guys with us tonight provides us with an exceptional opportunity to learn more about maritime heritage and marine archaeology. We're so grateful to have you here tonight.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So before we get into our chat with Justin and with Leila, just one other question I have for our audience, and this one is a multiple choice question. Same routine with the Mentimeters. If we can pull that up on the screen, great. In what ways can shipwrecks shape the seafloor? A, they can cause pollution. B, they can create habitat and artificial reefs. C, they can cultivate microbial communities. Or D, all of the above. So while you're taking a moment to answer that question, I'd like to ask everyone to also just think about what questions you might have for Leila and Justin, and start to drop those into our chat box. And you can ask as many questions as you have along the way. We've got some folks behind the scenes who are monitoring the questions, and we'll try to cover as many as we can in the next 50 minutes or so. So while we take a moment for your questions to start rolling in, and we'll visit that Mentimeter question in just a few minutes, I have a couple of questions to get us started. So Justin and Leila, let's start with a bit of a broad perspective on your work and get to know the two of you a little bit. I know each of you comes to maritime heritage and marine archaeology from very different perspectives, from very different angles. So could I ask you each to sort of briefly share your specific focus on the topic? And I think let's start with Justin.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's good to be in conversation with you, Leila, as well. I'm happy to be in this virtual space with you all from all over the country and all over the world. For me, maritime archaeology is kind of something I fell into. I started out studying archaeology on land, and most of my work throughout my studies have been land archaeology. It wasn't until around 2016 when the work I was doing connected with the Society of Black Archaeologists. I actually got exposure to Diving with a Purpose and some of the work that was happening out of the Smithsonian Slave Wrecks Project. And at that time, we were doing terrestrial archaeology, and the group was looking for slave shipwrecks at the Smithsonian side. And when they asked us if we knew any Black underwater archaeologists, we said, well, we only know of one, but there's possibilities, of course, to expand into many different directions. And so they worked with the Smithsonian, and we set up a joint training program. And myself and my colleague, Dr. Ayana Fluellen, got certified as scuba divers. And the image you see here is actually my diving certification, I guess about 6 years ago now that I say that. Yeah, from there, we just got deeper into the field of underwater archaeology and tried to take our expertise underwater.
Fantastic. Thank you, Justin. Justin, can you just say a few words about what Diving with a Purpose is?
Certainly, yes. Diving with a Purpose is a nonprofit organization founded by several individuals, initially with the intention of looking for a slave shipwreck called the Guerrero off the coast of Florida. Most of the early members were members of the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. And over the years, they've developed a youth program as well as an adult program where they actually help NOAA as well as the National Park Service map shipwrecks off the coast of Florida. They also branch out into coral restoration as well. And most of them are recreational scuba divers who just have a passion for underwater heritage and underwater conservation. So you can check out divingwithapurpose.com for more information about some of the work that they're doing there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Justin. And Leila, how about you? What's your direction on this topic?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic, and I wanted to echo what Justin said before. It's really great to be here in this forum. It's one of the fun things that NOAA does. It creates these great connections with people that we know, and like Justin, people I've just met. So thank you. So for me, marine archaeology was a surprising turn of events in my career, and it's important to get out of the way in the beginning that I'm not an archaeologist. I have no training whatsoever in the field, but a lot of my brain is spent on submerged archaeology, especially in deep sea environments. And this life came to me through the Deepwater Horizon spill of all places. It's an event that changed a lot of what we know about the Gulf of Mexico, and I could say it changed just about every bit of my life and my science in some really positive ways out of such a detrimental event. But I was interested in studying how contaminants from the spill, in particular dispersants, were impacting microbes on the seafloor in the Gulf of Mexico. It was a topic that nobody was really studying. And in the process of formulating a question for that, I met a marine archaeologist who was interested also in dispersants, but she wanted to know how dispersants were potentially impacting the preservation of deep sea shipwrecks. And it was this like peanut butter cup moment. There used to be these commercials where your chocolate fell into my peanut butter fell into your chocolate, and it made this delicious thing. And out of that, we got together and had a multi-year study of how the spill impacted 19th century and World War II shipwrecks in the deeper parts of the Gulf of Mexico. And this just opened up a whole line of inquiry beyond the spill for me of how shipwrecks and other things that we place on the seafloor are shaping invisible life in the ocean in really impactful ways. And through that, I met a really great colleague. I got to study this wonderful ecosystem of the Gulf of Mexico that means so much to me, and it really was it's a life-changing field, and I'm happy to be in it.
I love that, Leila. I love the peanut butter cup analogy.
I wonder if people remember it.
I think, if I said Reese's peanut butter cups to people, I think they'd get it. But when those moments happen in our lives, they're just golden, aren't they?
They really are.
Yeah. Leila, I think we have an image of how many shipwrecks we know that are in the Gulf of Mexico. Can we pull that up for a moment?
Yeah, it's an image that I like to say it's the image that benthic ecologists can't unsee. It's one of the images that really stopped me in my tracks, because before I met that colleague who talked to me about these deep sea shipwrecks, I didn't know these were down there. And for a decade, I had been sampling the deep sea with some pretty heavy coring equipment. I'm a mud person. My lab really traffics in mud quite a bit, and it was I just couldn't unsee that image, and it really just affected every bit of scientific inquiry I had, because a lot of us as scientists, as natural scientists, we're thinking about the seeps and the vents and the mud and all of these natural environments. And I saw that, and it occurred to me that these aren't natural environments entirely. The human handprint is there, and it has been there, and it's probably affecting every interpretation we have about the ocean, and a lot of us aren't paying attention to that.
Great words, and I'm certain we're going to expand on that in a few moments. Thank you for that. Could we bring up the answers to the poll question about how shipwrecks shape the seafloor? We've got a smart audience. Do you want to speak to the answer to that a little bit, Leila?
Yep. Everyone got it. Shipwrecks most certainly can cause pollution. One of the sites that we've been trying to locate in the Gulf of Mexico, the shipwreck Norlindo. This was one of the first casualties of World War II. It was a oil tanker, and so with that wreckage, it's very likely that there's quite a bit of oil on the seafloor. We can see some of the pictures that you showed, the video especially that you showed at the beginning of this session. There was the bow of a shipwreck that was just chock-a-block with worms and life that you can see. There's the bow of the shipwreck Annona, one of my favorite places on this planet, and it is just covered in slimy stuff and fluffy stuff and all of this macrobiological stuff that other biologists study. But it also has microbes that are teeming all over this structure, and all of that fluffy, visible to the eye material, it can't be there unless the microbes get there first and lay down biofilms, which are just sticky cell-packed substances that form on anything that goes into the ocean and allows anything to graduate from just a chunk of metal or a chunk of wood into what we can see there as an artificial reef. And that's one of the perspectives that I bring to the field, is that I'm looking for the things that you can't see, and maybe that's very boring to some folks, but for me, it's like, what a challenge, sign me up.
Yeah, so the biodiversity goes so far beyond what we can see, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that answer. I'm going to move on a little bit farther just to warm us up a little bit more and continue to get to know you guys a little bit better. When we were preparing for this event, we talked a little bit about agency or action, and thinking about what agency means to you in the context of maritime heritage. Like, why do you do this work? Why is it so important? And Justin, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the power of the stories that we uncover is really inspiration to continue doing this work. I often tell my students that as an archaeologist, what we try to do is remember what it is that we've forgotten as human beings. Everything from where we've navigated across the waterways, to the things that we've built, to the things that we've destroyed, to the different experiences that we've had. And allowing us to use underwater archaeology as a method and a tool to see what that looks like underwater, and in some cases above the water, really opens us up to a whole opportunity to recover some of these stories. It's also amazing that our work doesn't just stop with shipwrecks. I mean, there's underwater towns and communities, both indigenous and other communities, that we can uncover and explore. We can look at artifacts and objects the same way on that underwater in the same ways that we look at it on land. And for me, that's a big inspiration. I know there's not a whole lot of people that are trained to do this kind of work, and being sort of honored to have this opportunity and then ask the questions and go to the places that we think are critical in this moment to explore is really a great opportunity. And for me, I mean, it's led me to explore aspects of history that I never thought of, and in some cases I never thought I'd be interested in. Everything from looking at slave shipwrecks all over the world, to looking at World War II wrecks, to then thinking about airplane wrecks in the water, and then in some cases, in Jamaica, communities like Port Royal as well. And really being able to not only photograph these sites, but create images that then people can interact with. And the big follow-up I think that's going to be coming down the line as we do this work is, what are people's reactions, responses, and inspirations that come about when we bring these stories back to popular memory. As we mentioned, a lot of people aren't able to dive on some of these World War II wrecks that you might see here, but may have memories, recollections, and understandings of some of these sites and events. So that's sort of my inspirations at the moment.
Great. You're really helping the general public and everyone just see things that we would never ever see otherwise. Hidden beneath the ocean for decades to centuries.
Definitely. Yep.
Leila, how about you? What makes this work so important to you?
There are a lot of parts of this work that are important to me, and something that you both just said. What we're allowing people to see, these places on the seabed, and what we all see, when we see these sites is a little bit different. We have the opportunity to bring a different perspective to seeing these places that have been hidden for decades, or that we've never seen, even once before. And I love shipwrecks. I think that they're really cool. They're interesting places to visit. But my dirty secret is that they're really just a means to an end for me. I can get folks excited, to plan an expedition, and go through the pain and suffering sometime, and the excitement about going offshore and throwing some heavy equipment into the ocean and studying these sites. But their means to the end is, I want to know how we're changing the ocean. And when I think about microbes, I think about their extraordinary diversity. I think about their incredible longevity on this planet. Microbes have been here longer than all of us and all life on Earth, and they've experienced and seen every bit of change on this planet. And that allows them to be sentinels for the world around them, and sentinels for change, both natural and human made. And so, all of this work around the shipwrecks that I've done is trying to get a view of history. I'm very much, committed to the idea of history and revealing that. But in this case, it's the hidden history of the world that's written in the mud. You can see some beautiful mud here. It's some of my favorite stuff, being sampled by a remotely operated vehicle. And in this mud, microbes are scribes of the stories of past, present, and even future changes in biodiversity on the seabed. And these changes, they're not obvious. You can't just look at them with your naked eye and say that mud next to that shipwreck is different than that mud over there. We have to use all kinds of tools, genetic analysis, computational tools, bioinformatics, and reveal these ways that we're changing the seafloor. And to go back to the beginning, like this idea that I love shipwrecks, they're so cool, but a washing machine on the seafloor, a shipping container. When we have hurricanes down here on the Gulf Coast, all kinds of debris gets chucked out into the ocean, and that eventually ends up on the seafloor. And there's very likely a microbe or a whole community of microbes that are responding to this. And like this image right here, it's not terribly exciting to us right now. These are just some washing machines that were discovered on the seabed. I wonder what this looks like to explorers, 200 years from now, or more than that. Will these become these exciting artifacts of this past culture of 2024 and earlier? And will that be the only story they're telling, or will it be the story of how we changed the seabed and then how we figured out how?
Interesting. Yeah, and people don't think about the ways that we're changing the seabed every day. That image of the washing machines is pretty powerful, from a cargo container that fell into the Pacific off of a shipping vessel.
Right.
Leila, I wanted to ask you, the amount of biomass in the ocean that is microbes, how much is it?
I don't know if I would frame it as biomass. It's a numbers game. But biomass makes you think of, things that you can touch and feel and see. And most microbes, they're especially in the ocean, they're greater than 0.2 microns in size, which doesn't mean a lot, but that is the limit that you can see something under a microscope in most teaching laboratories and classes. So they're really small, but by a numbers game, they outnumber every single organism and all of our cellular biomass, all of the individual cells in our bodies and in elephants and so forth, by the non-millions. That's the number in the ocean. And it's a number, an exponent that doesn't mean anything, because my brain sort of taps out after a billion. I'm never going to be terribly wealthy because I don't have, the capacity for higher math. But when you write out those zeros, you really start to capture how massive their numbers are and their longevity, and they really own the ocean. We're just visitors, but this has been their home for billions of years. So it's important to listen to what they're telling us.
And so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
I need to Google 9 million next.
I know, right? I'm not sure what that is. So last question from me before we go to audience questions. Just wanted to get a sense of some of your own history and what captivated you guys to do the work that you do, either as a young person, an aha moment, or someone who inspired you to take the directions that you've taken. Leila, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I guess I'd love to say that my big aha moments were when I was young, but a lot of my aha moments, they came when I was an adult, and really when I entered graduate school. Even I always knew I wanted to study oceans. I wasn't really sure of what part of the ocean until I met my doctoral advisor. That's him there, Robert Jonas. He's retired now, but he's somebody that really cultivated a creative sense in me about invisible things and challenging things and challenging topics. And it's an important thing to say, because I know that there are teachers watching this, that teachers have such enormous power. They have the ability to create and cultivate creativity, or they can also snuff it out. And so it's so important to find those mentors in life that inspire. And this man, he inspired me, so much. And his inspiration was because he didn't have a preordained idea of what a marine microbial ecologist was. He knew that what I brought to the table was as important as anybody else could bring. That my perspective, my ability, my abstract way of thinking sometimes, the way that I care about art in my science, all of these things were good, to the study of invisible things in the hardest to reach places. And, I think he knew that kind of challenging career in life would be exciting to me. And so, I took his lead and ran with it in my own way. That's gotten me into trouble, and sometimes it's gotten me out of trouble. But it's allowed me to tell stories of science in a voice that I recognize. And it sometimes takes you a lifetime to hear that voice, even if it's your own. But I hear it, and through that voice, I hear the voice of my mentor too, and it's very meaningful to me.
That's really fabulous. It sounds like you found a friend and a mentor and a teacher all in the same person.
Definitely, and a kick in the butt quite a lot too.
That's great. That's great. So he helped you with some self-awareness along the way, huh?
For sure.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I like what you said about, not having this preconceived notion of what a microbial scientist is or looks like. And oftentimes when I interact with my students, I'm often the first archaeologist they've ever met, let alone the first underwater archaeologist they've ever met. And that provides a unique opportunity then for us to really frame what it is that is out there in terms of potential that you could explore and you could study, coming from different backgrounds. And for me, my motivation has always been just trying to explore those questions and those histories that don't often get talked about. And of course, being African American, one of the key moments for me was actually going deeper into African American history and understanding the potential for archaeology to really get at some of these stories that we don't get a chance to read about in archives. So that's kind of what's been guiding my research over the years, both in the Virgin Islands, looking at plantation archaeology, as well as underwater, looking at slave shipwrecks and other sites. And then, of course, working with such a great group of divers and individuals. I tell my students, too, that the beautiful thing about the work we do is we don't often look for answers more so than we look for more questions. And being able to work in these large interdisciplinary groups with folks like marine biologists, microbiologists, and all these different scientists that work underwater, we're able to really ask new and interesting questions that can be used to piece together bits of history or give us a better understanding in terms of how these heritage sites are affecting these underwater benthic environments. And to me, that's the exciting part of the work we get to do. And just understanding that I can be a little piece of that to help kick off this bigger point of exploration is what guides me and kind of motivates me moving forward.
That's great. And didn't you share with me, Justin, that learning to dive was really a pivotal moment in your career?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So of course, before I got into this area, I could swim. I could get from one side of the swimming pool to the other, but by no means was I a diver or had this burning itch to go into the ocean. But it was really working with Diving with a Purpose and the Slave Rex Project that really got me underwater, got me certified, and opened me up to the possibility of what could happen if you do underwater archaeology and actually expose this heritage underwater. So that was really a big moment for me was being able to actually go underwater and look at these sites.
Fantastic, great, yeah. The first time one goes diving is quite an impactful moment.
Right, definitely.
Okay, so we've got some folks behind the scenes who are scanning some questions for us. Can we bring an audience question up on the screen? So Lisa is asking, she's very curious to learn about the African coastline and the archaeology there. Are there some resources out there where she could learn more? I think that's a you question, Justin.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say, underwater archaeology in general is still underexplored. I would say the African coastline is even more so underexplored than some of these other sites around the US and the Caribbean. Some of the biggest projects that have been done, the Slave Wrecks Project, working out of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. They've been documenting slave shipwrecks since about 2004. They've done some great work in South Africa with a number of colleagues, looking at a slave shipwreck called the Sal Jose, which you can actually visit in the African American Museum. There's pieces of it there. And they're doing work currently in Mozambique. They're doing some work in Senegal and Brazil and other sites as well that I think are going to come to sort of bigger popular awareness in the next few years. There's also been some work done off the coast of Ghana, and then individual archaeologists have been working off of a number of other sites, including Mauritius and a number of sites, Madagascar. So I think there's a number of sites out there. Unfortunately, a lot of it is buried in sort of the academic literature. If you're not an academic, it can be a little difficult to access. But I think in the next few years, it's going to become more publicly accessible in terms of what's out there.
Yeah. Hopeful for that. Very hopeful for that.
Yeah.
So we've got another question popping up on the screen. This is one that we definitely wanted to ask you guys. When you're considering equity within maritime heritage and maritime archaeology, and this kind of gets to some of what you were just talking about, Justin, with things sort of lost in the academic world and not out for the general public. Different things come to the forefront of different people's minds. Justin, when you think about this question, what comes to the forefront of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, for me, equity is important to get at the right questions and to get at the diversity of questions that we need. I tell my students all the time, the types of questions that I'm asking right now are going to be different from the types of questions that you'll ask in 10 years from now. Part of it's based off of our social situation just globally and what might be of interest to us. Some of it is the sites that we want to look at. We don't have the technology to explore yet. And some of it is that some of the sites we need to get to haven't happened yet. Maybe there is a wreck that will come in the future, or there's a site that will be submerged, unfortunately, due to climate change or other issues. And so being open to that, I think it's important to have equity in the field, because the equity is going to determine who allocates their time and resources to these areas. So whereas I have interest in African archaeology and African diaspora archaeology, somebody else may have interest in archaeology of the Philippines or Southeast Asia. Somebody else may have interest in Central America. And we need to pull all these pieces together to begin to tell this bigger story of human history that I think we're after at the end of the day.
I love that. And there's just so much unknown, and how all those might even interact with each other in ways that we don't know.
Definitely.
How about you, Leila? What does equity in this field mean to you?
I 100% agree with everything Justin just said, and I could just add that the questions that the science that we do, it's all based on questions, and the questions that we ask, they come from our perspectives. I think it's Andrew Wyeth. He's a painter. He was quoted saying, "Perspective is everything." So there comes the abstract art that flares up in everything I do. And so, if our perspectives are driving the science questions that we ask, it's really important that we all have the ability to ask those questions, because every one of those perspectives is valuable and important and different than something that was asked, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and certainly what's going to be asked, decades from now. I love the idea that my data, volumes and volumes of my data, like these shipwrecks, is going to have a whole second life, maybe even a third life. And someone's going to come along to science that, had a completely different viewpoint from their very beginnings, that allows them to look at an image like one of the Monterey shipwrecks from an expedition that we had last summer, and they will see something in this image that I never even thought of. They will be able to do something with this image that, me being long gone, couldn't, and that is beautiful. And I want all of those minds and ideas to be able to have a seat at all of our scientific tables.
Thanks for that, Leila. And you bring up the Monterey wrecks, and the Monterey wrecks were three, if I remember correctly, 3 shipwrecks off of the Gulf of Mexico that were only discovered a few years ago, and they were cargo vessels, and a couple of different ships of exploration built on one another's knowledge over time to get to the information that we have about those wrecks now, right? So who knows what comes next as far as somebody who might go back, 5, 10 years from now, and what microbes might be there, what organisms might be there, what kind of decomposition might happen, right?
That the study that we did of these wrecks is a perfect example of this whole idea of perspective. So you're right; those were only discovered about 10 years ago. It's one of the most significant deep water archaeological finds because you very rarely find 3 shipwrecks that sank at the same time, at the same depth. They have all of these environmental constraints that are the same. And for the archaeological community, this was an incredible treasure trove of history, of the history of the an old blue economy moving across the Gulf of Mexico, transporting cargo and materials. And then I come along and I'm like, that's cool. All of these environmental variables are constrained and they're all in the same temperature, depth, salinity. Seems like a really good microbiological experiment. And I go back and the work that we did there, we did capture these really cool images. We did, see artifacts that hadn't been seen in the previous expeditions. But I went on a mud bonanza and collected as many mud samples as I could so that I can study how are these wrecks shaping the seafloor around them and do an actual experiment, which you can't do at any other shipwreck site in the Gulf of Mexico. And, the way that my brain works allowed me to design that experiment. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to get into this field, that my perspective was welcomed and accepted here so that I can do work like that. And I hope in 10 years or 20 years, someone comes back and does a very respectful and careful, but even weirder experiment than the one that we did.
It's great when those creative opportunities that just make themselves known and you're able to jump on it, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so flipping off of what you just, or kind of riffing off of what you had just shared and thinking about the different ways that we're exploring all of these different environments, there are a lot of really special tools that we use to explore maritime heritage environments, never mind the ocean in general. Maybe the two of you can speak a little bit to some of the tools that you've used in your exploration experience. And Justin, why don't we start with you with that one this time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably the surprisingly the easiest but most intricate is the camera, and that's just because a lot of the work we have to do is to record these sites, and so what used to be in the past just taking individual still photographs of sites now has sort of developed into what we call 3D photogrammetry. And we're able to now create 360-degree views of some of these sites from thousands of images that we're able to collect underwater. And this is just one of the renderings made by one of our colleagues, Dominic Bush, who actually did his work in some of these microbial communities and underwater sites and cited Leila's research heavily in that work. But it's able to provide us a perspective, a snapshot of these sites in real time. And what used to take us 2 to 3 weeks with 8 to 10 divers to map a site now, we can essentially do in one dive with 2 divers and a GoPro camera. And it's really speeding up our ability to document sites. It's much cheaper, of course, as you can imagine, which means that we can get to more sites more effectively. And now, leading into another aspect of it, with the development of underwater ROVs or remote operated vehicles, we are able to actually go to deeper depths. And Leila works with the sort of $1 million plus versions, and I work with the sort of 2,000 plus versions. But we do some similar work in the sense of capturing some of these images underwater at great depths. And you all saw that site, that image, that map of all those wrecks in the Gulf. And you can only imagine what that looks like across the Atlantic in Florida and in the Pacific as well. And these underwater ROVs allow us to get to some of those sites that are too dangerous for us to go at recreational depths. So yeah, just excited about this emergent in technology. It's growing rapidly, and of course, with emergence of AI, that's a whole separate conversation. But being able to track underwater marine life as it moves in some of these environments, and being able to piece together some of these landscapes is going to be equally critical.
Yeah. And Justin, you mentioned ROVs, the big expensive ROVs and the little not so expensive ROVs. And one of the things that we're evolving towards within the exploration community is smaller, cheaper, faster, right?
Definitely.
So we can get more people out there and get more information faster.
Definitely.
And noticing the photogrammetry pictures that you shared, the amount of detail we're able to get using GoPros and the technology that we have now, to be able to identify elements of those wrecks just by those pictures.
Right. Yeah, it's wild. As stuff becomes more commercially available, it opens up a whole new range of opportunity for us to engage communities and for us to do more work more effectively.
Yeah, yeah, so cool. You also bring to light, the interdisciplinary nature of the profession. To be a photographer, to be a videographer, to be a diver, to be a geologist. There's all different elements that are involved in that.
Right,
That's great.
definitely.
Leila, how about you? Some of the tools that you use to do your work?
Yeah, so I'll acknowledge the $1 million ROV in the room. I did want to comment there. The smaller ROVs, that is one of the ones that I've worked with my buddy there. The 7-function manipulator arm. The $1 million ROV comes with $50,000 titanium robotic arm that we use to pick up the most delicate corals and all kinds of sea life, including the mud that that we care about so much. But a big device like this, I can't drive it. I will never admit on a camera that I've driven anything like this. But it's also, it's a huge learning curve to figure out the logistics and how to manage one of these. And it acts as a little bit of a gatekeeper. And so the more that we push out into technologies that are accessible, that are democratic, the more ability that we have to get more people into science. And I absolutely love the idea, of having these suitcase ROVs, to be able to explore more places that are meaningful to us. But we do a lot of work with ROVs. ROVs, you have a car driving around on the seafloor, and you need to know where it is, when it's a mile or more down. There is no GPS underwater yet, but that's something that the scientific community is working towards. And until that, we have acoustic positioning, which is essentially using sound and bouncing sound off of a beacon and a receiver so that you know where your $1 million toy is on the seafloor. And that's on a long list of things that I never knew that I would need to know about as a marine microbial ecologist. We need ships, research vessels to get out into the ocean, and and ones that are capable of deploying an ROV. That's the University of Southern Mississippi's ship, the research vessel Point Sur. We have packed more gear than you can even imagine on the back deck of that, so that we can launch and recover an ROV, as well as landers. A lander is just it's just a fancy name for a big piece of equipment that you either stick in the seafloor or drop on the seafloor. And we're working around shipwrecks, so we tend to not just launch something off of the deck and see what happens. We've deployed landers like this one here very carefully off the back of an ROV, and later recovered them. And their purpose is to attract and collect microbes. And in that experiment, those were biofilms that we were trying to collect, so that we could see, in terms of microbes, who's there and what are they doing, through genetic analyses. And there are just so many, tools that you end up bringing to these parties, especially when you're working in a deep environment, you're way offshore. You want to make sure that you are packing as much science as you possibly can into those days, because we want to respect the public investment in science by as we say, we're either soaking gear or moving to our next site. And we'll collect chemical samples, biological samples, all kinds of samples, because we're there and we may never have the chance to go back again. And that's why it's so important to have different perspectives in science, so that you have the ability to say that sample might be important. Can you grab it for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And having the ability to communicate with scientists on shore at the same time, right? And and they can ask you to grab a sample while you're out there.
Yeah,
which is phenomenal.
It's really important too. A lot of times I'm the only biologist on a cruise. Lots of people ask me, "What's that fluffy, green and an orange thing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm a microbiologist. This is the shipwreck Ewing Bank. I'm a microbiologist. That's about 1 billion microns above my intellect level. But now we can call someone and say, what is that? And have we seen it before? And should we know more about it?"
Mm-hmm. And I think those are, I didn't know Venus flytrap anemones were white, but I think that's what that is in the top center.
That's good to know. This is part of the the science and art interest I have. I have this very large in my house, and now I can tell people what it is that they're looking at, other than the copper cladding of the Ewing Bank wreck. So thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. It's a beautiful image. It really is. That's great. Okay, I think we have a few more audience questions. Could we pull up another one? Oh, protection of these sites from being exploited. How does that work, guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll say what we try to do on our end, because we are sort of instrumental in documenting these wrecks. The sites that we do work at, we provide GPS locations, photographs, coordinates, and all kinds of information to the state, usually so that their conservators and their protection agencies can understand what resources they have underwater. Sometimes they'll go back to check to monitor these sites. Sometimes communities will do the monitoring to see if things have been reported tampered with or potentially retrieved in any way. The other thing that we do is we scrub the GPS coordinates and all the metadata from all our images before we use them, because people get through some very interesting ways to try to locate where some of these sites are. We're very sensitive about the images that we do post. So you all often see the nice images that we put together, but there's all kinds of other information that's packed in some of the information that we send specifically to these places. And then I'll just say that it is an active issue in terms of being able to monitor these sites. Even land sites can be difficult to monitor, with people potentially looting and stealing all kinds of things. But when you have underwater sites, the amount of agents that can actually work on these sites to monitor, to prevent, is very limited. So it is an area where I think, just as a global community, we need to invest more effort into trying to figure out how do we document and protect these sites from being looted, and potentially from being damaged by other means as well.
So many of these sites are in national monuments as well. So what does that mean for protection?
Yeah, being in a national monument, offers another level of security that I think many other sites don't get. One is that there are efforts to actually document the sites that are in these sanctuaries, and that provides some level of understanding of what's in there. Of course, it is illegal to take objects from sanctuaries as well. So there's a level of potential legal prosecution that can take place if that does occur. And there are usually sanctuary NOAA officials and others who are monitoring these sanctuaries for different reasons. And having that physical presence there also helps to prevent people from potentially looting some of these sites. So that's a big piece there.
Leila, anything you would add to that conversation?
Yeah, the worry is always there that folks are going to take artifacts off the sites. So we're, in our work, we are also very careful about protecting the coordinates, the location of any of our sites. And we have a number of ways of doing that. including when we're on site. It's not just not writing it down. People can see where your ship is, and so we have ways of avoiding that. And we're also careful when we're publishing. And it's not just the taking of artifacts. Shipwrecks are fish havens, and you don't want to make them a place where folks are going to be putting fishing gear, whether it's recreational or commercial fishing, over them. So it's equally important to protect the location of the sites for that. And all of our work, and all of it in the foreseeable future, is we have no collection studies. We do not have a collection permit. We do not disturb in any way any of the artifacts or anything that could be considered an artifact, or the actual wreckage site itself. And so it's a very conservative approach that we take to exploring these sites. And I try to never sail and study a cultural heritage site without an archaeologist there.
Great. I love the absolute incredible, conscientious, thoughtful way that we're looking at these sites as historic entities, as museums, as graveyards, as biological havens. There's just so much richness to all of this. I think we have another question about ecological restoration in relationship to these sites. Thoughts there?
I can take a shot at this one. So restoration activities, they're just start off by saying they're incredibly important, especially when we think about the topics that we study of ecological change through human activities. And at our deep water sites, restoration's a little bit tough. It's you're miles, in some cases mile deep under the sea. But there is a large effort happening in the Gulf of Mexico currently. It's a NOAA funded program to study and find ways to restore mesophotic. These are deep water coral reefs and their associated ecosystems. And so, scientists from all walks of life are sampling, studying, looking at areas in these mesophotic zones, and also picking out sites that have potential for restoration, especially coral restoration. And because we know that corals appreciate hard substrate to grow and propagate, and we typically see mesophotic corals on shipwrecks, that some of these sites have been identified as potential places to focus restoration efforts on. Although I'm not directly involved in any coral propagation or coral restoration work, mostly the characterization of sites as potential candidates for that type of work.
Yeah, and I've done some work with Diving with a Purpose around coral restoration, and I know they work closely with the Coral Restoration Foundation, and I've done some contacts in the Nature Conservancy as well. That this is a big issue that we talk about. Part of my research on land is studying the environmental impacts of slavery, and in the Virgin Islands, a lot of the historic buildings are made out of coral. And we know from historical records that they were actively mining coral off of the nearshore environment and then using them to build these buildings. So even the reefs that we see in the Virgin Islands today likely did not look like the reefs would have looked like over 200 years ago. So part of the work we're trying to do now is partner more with these organizations to see if we can help to rebuild these reefs as this critical question of how do we actually begin to not only acknowledge the change that has happened and some of the detriment that's happened, but then offer some sort of redress to the work that we're doing. And my colleague, Dr. Ayanna Flewellen, and I have a paper coming out soon to talk more about how we can do this more as archaeologists, not only working in ocean environments, but working in land environments too, where we see these environmental changes across large periods of time. So we're hoping that we can begin to partner and pair these in unique ways moving forward, understanding that the stewardship of the cultural heritage is just as important as the stewardship of the natural environment as well, and what we can do to pair those together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Justin, we'll be talking with your colleague Ayanna on Thursday. We're looking forward to that as well. Yeah. When you were talking about the coral, are there organizations that you're working with to grow coral to replant it?
To replant? Yeah, so Diving with a Purpose has been working with a number of organizations. As I mentioned, the Coral Restoration Foundation. They actually teach classes to recreational scuba divers that want to assist in that work. The Nature Conservancy, particularly in the Virgin Islands, they have programs where they'll have these outplanting sort of relays or rallies. So they'll ask for community members who are certified divers to go out and help to outplant as well. And
Great.
I'll just stress a lot of this is still experimental. We're not sure, how much of these reef economy or reef ecologies will actually grow and propagate, and how successful they'll be. But again, all of it is sort of these experiments and these tests that are happening now to see if we can curb what we're essentially facing now.
Yeah, I was just at the Georgia Aquarium recently, and they're cultivating coral for putting back into reef systems to help restore different coral reef situations. I'm not sure where their corals go, but I know there's a lot of aquariums that are doing similar work. There's a lot of effort out there to try to make that difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, thanks for those answers. I think we have another question that kind of aims towards the student population. Carol in Texas is asking, what do you wish educators, looking like college educators, could teach our future scientists? What do you think is missing? Or not missing?
Yeah, I would just say to encourage them to be curious, encourage them to understand that there are certain tools and skills that are going to be needed to explore the questions of the future, and understanding that they are going to be critical in trying to uncover what that is. I think far too often, especially now, students are expected to go to the professor for the answers. And when we tell them we don't have the answers, then they kind of look perplexed. So I think we can really encourage, especially the younger generation, to say, like, we need your help to figure out these answers. And this is going to be a collaborative, intergenerational process to do this work. And then I always tell people, like, get your hands dirty when you can. So if you can encourage students to go out to a sanctuary, or if you can encourage them potentially to go out to an aquarium and just talk to folks and see if you can get behind the scenes and learn the work that's actually being done. There's tons of work and assistance that needs to happen, that can happen in these spaces.
Justin, you mentioned intergenerational efforts and work. Can you expand on that a little bit, what that means in relationship to student advice?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's always this sort of assumption that we need to develop a new question or find a new avenue or new lane that we claim as our own when we do this work. And really what we need to be doing is building off of the work of what we've been trained in. And I mean, the people who trained me to get me certified to be a scuba diver are all retired by the time I met them. And the questions that I'm exploring now as a younger scientist are questions that they would have had 30, 40 years ago had they known that this was a pathway that they could explore. And so having conversations with them allows me to help guide where my research questions are going to go, what I should be looking at. And then, of course, their ability to train a younger generation in areas, I think, is critical. And it's always going to be, I think, this intergenerational conversation and work that helps us to push it forward into the spaces it needs to go.
Yeah, every generation has its valuable input, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Leila, how about you with that question for our future scientists?
I guess I'd go kind of a simple route. A question that my mentor always asked me, still does, are you happy in your work? A phrase that my father always said, do what makes you happy. And I thought that was a bit of a throwaway piece of advice, but it's really good advice, because I think it makes you a good scientist when your science and your work comes from a place of joy. It makes for better and kinder workplaces, and that happiness can be a strong, powerful force in creating a sense of belonging in science. And so, make sure that our students know that it's good to be happy in your work. Look at those faces.
I love that. That's great. It is good to be happy in your work. It's really important, in my opinion. So I've got two more questions for you guys. One is just sort of a fun one, or an inspiring one. Thinking about what all the experiences that you've had in ocean exploration and in marine archaeology, working with microbes. What's one of the most exciting or bizarre or inspiring experiences each of you have had in your realm of working in this field? Leila, can we start with you?
Yeah. Not all of the most exciting moments happen at sea. Some happen at the lab in front of your computer, and you don't have to be a seagoing scientist to get exciting moments in maritime, heritage. But I had a very bizarre experience. We were studying the second deepest shipwreck in the Gulf of Mexico, site 15470, very exciting name to it. And the project was to discover the site. We were the first to ever see this site. So we spent a lot of time doing the archaeological survey before we were able to do the microbiome sampling that I did. And I was the chief scientist of the cruise. So I was doling out time to everyone. And we were, flying over the site, and the archaeologists kept coming back to a plate. It was a little blue plate. There it is, just really visible, sitting up with some, spoons and artifacts next to it. And they wanted to take pictures of this plate. And so we would do a scan, and we came back to this plate. And I was like, seriously, the plate again, like thinking in my head and kind of, asking them to, let's move it along. And we were done with the cruise. We had these great images of this plate. And months later, I'm developing a report for NOAA. This was a NOAA discovery. And I'm asking the archaeologists to give us the information, on their aspect of the study, this quarterly report. And the same scientist who I had that peanut butter and chocolate moment with, she's a dear colleague of mine, Melanie Demore. She's got a great sense of humor too. She slips into a report a quick little blurb about the plate, that this artifact dated to, from 1829 to 1960. And it's from the Palestine series by, this manufacturing house. And so, and now we know the earliest date that the shipwreck could have been. And I practically fell out of my chair when I'm reading this, so that she so nonchalantly handed to me, because, it's a Palestine series, and I am of Palestinian origin, and I just could not believe the idea that artifact was sitting on this shipwreck that I happened to have the ability and the great fortune to go see. And so it was like shocking, and it it had great meaning, because it made me feel so seen and so much like I was in the place that I was supposed to be. And it was also funny too, because I was so bored of this plate, and she turned it around, and it was like this incredibly and deeply touching moment for me to have that connection, and to have that sense of belonging, that I was in the right place at the right time, and that the universe does really, really cool things.
Wow, that's so powerful, Leila. Yeah, the universe does do really cool things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always amazing when we have these personal connections to the sites that we work at. Oftentimes we don't expect going into these projects that emerge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
for you.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a different angle. My biggest encounter, I guess, was encountering a Goliath grouper for the first time in my life, and I didn't know that a Goliath grouper was a fish that existed in the world, let alone that there were fish this big in my life. And yeah, that's a nice image of one. Underwater, it looked a lot bigger to me, but it is still a very large fish, and I encountered it
Wow.
coming around the side of a wreck, and it was just sitting in this sort of exposed area of the wreck and looking back at me. And I didn't know if it could eat me. I didn't know how large it was. I didn't know anything about Goliath groupers at the time, let alone the name. So I was
Surprise.
taken aback. Yeah. Yes.
So did you come actually face to face with that fish?
I did. I actually did. Yeah. And I swam away very quickly.
Wow. Yeah, those are about the size of a human, and sometimes bigger, aren't they?
Yes, yes, they are. I don't know what they eat, but it wasn't going to be me that day. That's all I know.
Nice, nice. Um, well, we are getting on to closing time for our interview portion of today's event, but I wanted to close with the two of you with a thought. When we were interviewing you all for this event and thinking about items that we might have conversations on, Justin, you shared the words remember, remind, and restore in relationship to maritime heritage and marine archaeology and the work that you all do. And I'm wondering if the two of you can just share a few words on what those three words mean to you in relationship to the work that you do. And maybe we'll start with you on this one, Leila.
Um, remember, I guess I would think to remember your why you're doing the work that you're doing, because there are going to be hard days, and and that remembering of the why is going to get you back to that, that being of happy in your work. Remind yourself of your experimental question. It's really easy to get lost, and take rabbit holes and turns, and sometimes they turn into interesting discoveries, but most of the time they just delay you to graduation. And restore, I guess, restore your spirit and your strength by working with people who lift you up. I can't express how important it is to work with that kind of people.
I love that, Leila. It's beautiful, beautiful advice.
Yeah, yeah, I love the way that it can be interpreted and used in different ways and thought through in different ways. I was interested in this. I sort of thought through this mantra of remember, remind, and store, doing archaeology on land, and understanding that the work we're doing, the way I viewed it was trying to remember the things that we've done as humans that we've forgotten about, to remind ourselves of what it is that we're doing, and that reminding happens through education and also through other means of bringing this heritage to light, and then to restore the practices that maybe that we might have forgotten that we need in this moment, or to restore the memories that we may need, or in some cases to restore the environments that we're working in. And keeping that mantra in mind helps me to think of the work of archaeology not just as a singular moment of recording data, but in this bigger sort of framework of keeping these multiple angles together and multiple pieces together. And so I try to keep that as a motivating sort of framework whenever I start a new project, or I think about how I'm going to conclude a project, to make sure we hit on each of those three sort of tent poles.
I love that. Thank you both for that. Those three words just sort of encompass a lot of the work that you do from different directions, from different angles, and so powerful and essential, really. So I appreciate that. Um, yeah, so much great information here tonight. I really appreciate the two of you sharing your expertise and your individual perspectives on the field. I think our audience got a lot out of it, and we're super grateful.
Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I know it's getting late where you guys are. You're welcome to stick around with us. You're also welcome to go make dinner, do what you need to do, and we wish you well. So, folks, we're gonna switch gears here a little bit. Maritime heritage resources, when properly studied and interpreted, they add an incredibly important dimension to our understanding and appreciation of our maritime legacy and connect us to our past. So, again, we hope our experts' perspectives have shed some great light on the incredible work that's being done in this realm and have given you all some great food for thought. It's just two people's perspective on maritime archaeology. There's so much out there, and we're going to share some resources with you to help expand this in just a few moments. We also wanted to pop up a word cloud for you with a QR code again. If you could just drop in a few words about what was most intriguing to you about our interview and our conversations with our two experts. We'll give you some time to do that while we start to gear up for sharing some fantastic teaching resources to help our educators bring this information alive into the classroom. So take a moment to hop into the Mentimeter and drop a few words describing your thoughts. And with that, I am going to share my screen. And first, I am pulling up what is a curated list of a wide variety of resources, ranging from videos to lessons to modules that teachers can use in the classroom. And you'll see here, first, we have a number of different videos, including an entire maritime heritage video playlist, information about recent expeditions in the Battle of Midway off of Hawaii, a ton of different videos from national parks, from marine cultural heritage sites, from Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, paleo landscape projects, all of these being relatively short but really interesting. We also have image galleries on 3 different websites: the NOAA Ocean Exploration website, the Ocean Exploration Trust website, and also a website called the Deep Ocean Education Project that I'll share with you folks in just a few minutes. We have a number of different lessons and activities and modules listed here from a variety of resources, from National Marine Sanctuaries to Ocean Exploration Trust to the National Ocean Service for different grade levels. And we have a number of different fact sheets and information sheets on everything from why do we study shipwrecks to photogrammetry to information about those Monterey shipwrecks that we were talking about with Leila earlier. Lots of great information there. And we have a list of some of our recent expeditions, including Leila's expedition, the Microbial Stowaways, and the World War II battlefield expeditions, of which I believe those are the ones that Justin participated in. And then we have some additional resources. And for each of our presenters, both today and on Thursday, they each provided a few different interesting bits that highlight some of the work that they do. And for Leila, we have the collaboration across disciplines, microbial ecology meets archaeology. This is an essay that Leila wrote, very short, on her experience in sort of shifting or encompassing microbial biology with maritime archaeology. And then for Justin, we have a great video on the EV Nautilus, and this video covers some of his work in the Pacific. And that was a video produced by National Geographic. And then we also have a link to a game called When Rivers Were Trails, which is a game that focuses on the impact of colonization on indigenous communities in the 1890s. Sort of an interesting game for students to expose them to some of those thoughts. Then we also have links to all of the different organizations that are part of the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute. And you can take a look at those at your leisure. I will be sending this resource list to you as a follow-up to this presentation. I'd also like to take you to our ocean exploration website, oceanexplorer.noaa.gov, and just briefly show you where you can find some maritime heritage resources. We have a number of drop-down menus across the top of our website. One is expeditions, which you can browse by topic, location, or year. And if you click on topic, you can see that we've got a number of different topics here, from the Arctic to canyons and seamounts, but we have one on maritime heritage. And here you can see all of the expeditions that we've hosted through NOAA Ocean Exploration, funded through NOAA Ocean Exploration, to the beginning of our office. So there's some wonderful, wonderful information here. And if I go back up to that toolbar across the top and I go to multimedia, you'll see we've got a live video link for when our expeditions are live. We have video galleries and image galleries, among other things. And if I click on the video gallery, you have the same selection of a number of different topics, with maritime heritage being one of them. And you can click on a number of different videos from many, many different expeditions. And these are fabulous videos that cover everything from World War II expeditions, or World War II wrecks and expeditions to explore them, to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Titanic, to a number of different places across the globe. So also a great resource to explore. In the image gallery, similar thing. We have a maritime heritage link there, and you can pull up a number of different images that are related to maritime heritage, and you can even sort them by shipwrecks. You can sort them by aircraft. You can sort them by World War II or by sites and tools and get some great photogrammetry images, among others. So super way to quickly pull maritime heritage resources if you're looking for them for your classroom or other uses. And lastly, on our website, there's a science and technology section where you can click on exploration tools. And again, they're separated into a number of different topics, from emerging technology to chemistry, and marine archaeology is one of them. And you'll see here that a number of the different tools that we talk about when we talk about maritime heritage exploration are listed here. And photogrammetry is one of them. You can kind of get the whys and hows it works. Whys and how does it work information on this web page. So again, lots of really good, rich information. And on our education page in the drop-down top bar, you'll see also a number of education resources. And here we have 11 education themes. I'm going to pop up the main education page. We have 11 education themes from the Arctic to vents and volcanoes. And each of these is rich with fact sheets and lessons and multimedia information, videos and images sorted for educators. And quickly, I'm going to take you to the seafloor mapping page, which has lessons here at the top, and then a list of fact sheets, a list of field notes, various facts, a short video for the classroom on the topic, a link to a few expeditions, and images and video that are super suitable for the classroom. And we will soon be updating the theme page for maritime heritage this year. We're going to be writing a few new lessons. We're going to be adding some new information, some new fact sheets over the next several months. So we encourage you to look back on our site for that. Also on this page, you'll see a link for our professional development opportunities. We'll be offering professional development in person at our Education Alliance partner sites again in the fall. And you'll also see the Deep Ocean Education Project listed here, which I'd like to take you to as our last resource that I'd like to share. The Deep Ocean Education Project website was launched in 2021, and it's a resource hub that was developed in collaboration with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and features educational resources from the major ocean exploration entities, including NOAA Ocean Exploration Trust, Schmidt Ocean Institute, and several others. And I'm going to briefly walk you through this. You can see that the links up at the top are the main links for exploring this site. And if we click on Explore, this section, you'll see a familiar setup where it's separated by topic and organized by theme for classroom needs. And we're going to click on Underwater Cultural Heritage, and you'll see that you can ticker tape through a number of different underwater cultural heritage bits. But if we go back to this page, you can select by topic specifically. You can select by resource type, whether you want a fact sheet or you're looking for images or you're looking for background information or an activity. And you can also search by our organizations, or you can just do a broad search. So lots of different ways to look for the best of ocean exploration education information. And we encourage you to check this out. And you can also make your own free account and build your own collections from this site. So up here at the very top in the right-hand corner, you can click on My Account. And what you see here is my collection. I have a number of different collections that I've built, and Maritime Heritage is one of them. And I've separated my resources into images and videos and lessons and exploration notes. And you can make this same kind of collection. You can add resources, you can delete resources, And you can also share these with your friends and colleagues. And I will be sharing this list with you all as well as a follow-up to this presentation. And to learn how to build your own account, there's a short video referenced as Need Help, but it walks you through exactly how to build your own collection. Super easy, super fun, and I highly encourage you to check it out. And then lastly, if you click on vessels up here in the top right-hand corner, you will see our 3 vessels that are highlighted on this website: the Okeanos Explorer, the Nautilus from Ocean Exploration Trust, and Falkor 2 from Schmidt Ocean Institute. And you can see whether we're live or we're in port, and you can click directly to live events, and you can also see where we're going throughout any given year. So that's a great resource to check quickly, sort of one-stop shopping on where all 3 ships of exploration that are on this website are exploring. And there definitely will be some maritime heritage exploration happening this year. So please be sure to check that out. So again, we will be offering more educator professional development in the fall of 2024, and we encourage you to take a look at advertising for those on the Deep Ocean Education Project website and also on the NOAA Ocean Explorer education web pages in the future. So this does bring us to the end of our program this evening, and we'd love to offer a big thanks to Leila and Justin for their time and for sharing their expertise with us. And if you had some burning questions and we didn't answer them, or you watch this on a YouTube video later and we didn't answer your questions, please don't hesitate to email us at oceanexeducation@noaa.gov, and we'll run that across the bottom of the screen in just a moment. oceanexeducation@noaa.gov. And we'd also like to thank our team and crew behind the scenes from NOAA Ocean Exploration and also from the University of Rhode Island's Inner Space Center. And additionally, educators, if you need credit hours for tonight's event, please also email me at susan.haynes@noaa.gov. That's susan.haynes@noaa.gov. And we'll be sure to get a certificate of participation to you. And I'd love to quickly bring that word cloud back up on the screen and find out what you all thought of our interview with our participants, or with our experts. Restore, inspiring, interesting. Shipwrecks are bio-cool. Yes, love your job, love that. Eye-opening, fantastic. New resources, so many wrecks in the Gulf, absolutely. And the positive attitude, I like that too, right? And yes, we had a lovely, lovely pair of experts this evening and are so grateful for their time and so grateful for all of the time you all put into learning more about maritime heritage and marine archaeology. And with that, we want to close out with this pretty humorous 30-second clip of what's called a photo bomb while exploring the wreck of the tugboat called the New Hope in the Gulf of Mexico in 2018. And we think you'll really enjoy it and hope to see you all at another ocean exploration event soon. So until next time, have a great evening.